The Against All Odds podcast, sponsored by Oak Forest Recovery.
This is the Against All Odds podcast. I'm Hunter Shepard. This is RJ Lazaris, and this is Rachel. And we're here with Abbey Fickley.
Abbey Fickley.
Happy to be here.
Content creator, killing it on YouTube. She's on all the platforms, guys. Okay, Abbey Fickley. But also YouTube, you just hit 1.3 million.
I did.
Mama
Crazy.
in sobriety and long-term sobriety. We actually got sober around the same time. So that's
so
pretty cool. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a privilege, truly.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was funny. We went out to dinner last night, right? And then you posted that video of us at the table. And late last night, I got DM'd from a couple of alumni, some girls that were alumni of Oak Forest. And they're like, "Oh my God, you know Abby? You were with Abby? Oh my God, I want to see her. She's my favorite."
Are you serious?
I swear to God, yeah,
That
I'll
is
show you.
So
Yeah,
sweet.
Isn't that cool?
Oh, tell them I said hello.
I will. Well, you're gonna be able to. They'll probably watch this.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Well, hello, girls.
Yeah.
I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Super cool. Rad. Well, I want to hear your story. I really don't know anything.
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of cool. Kind of a cool place to start. You
Well,
know,
it's
not
dope.
having much.
Yeah, it's like I don't have a framework. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I like not having a framework, so I'm kind of surprised along with the audience.
Right, and I think you will. I think you will be surprised. I got quite some stories.
Rad.
Yeah, so I grew up, middle class. We had everything that we needed. We were privileged in that way. My parents are still together to this day. I have 2 older siblings. Growing up, I did okay in school. I was very much into cheerleading, gymnastics, all of the things. So the majority of my life up until I turned 18 was pretty average. I don't have like any crazy trauma or any bad things that happened to me. After high school, I went to beauty school, and that's when I started dating Bobby, who's the father of my child. We dated for 3 months, and I found out I was pregnant. At this time, I was still in beauty school. I was pregnant. I was working full time, just trying to kind of like build a life and a platform for my kid, which at 19 was scary. And I mean, all of it was just terrifying. I had no idea what to expect. We were so young.
For sure.
After I had her, I was diagnosed with extreme postpartum depression. That's really when things, hit the fan for me.
Where were you? Where?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Okay,
Yep,
cool.
Yep. So I grew up in Pittsburgh. The majority of my life I was out there up until I went to rehab for my first time. And to back up a little bit, like I will say, hindsight, especially now that I understand this disease and how it works within the brain. Hindsight, I remember in high school we'd go to parties and me and my friends would drink, or we would, just kind of dabble in substances, party drugs when we would go to prom and things like that. And one thing that I always would notice is when the party was over, like everybody was cool, everybody was moving on the next day with their day. I couldn't stop thinking about whatever substance it was that we were doing, and I wanted to do it again. Everybody else though was okay.
Yeah,
same. And I
Next.
actually one of my close friends, who's actually a pretty large content creator herself, her and I had a lot of fun together, but I even said it to her before. I'm like, I don't understand how you can do this and then just be okay after. I couldn't comprehend it, you know? And of course, at that time, again, I had no education on the disease. I couldn't understand it. So I just wanted to mention that, but nothing like super out of control in high school. So after I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, I was prescribed Xanax. And I remember the first time I took one of those pills, it was like everything I had ever, any just like bad, negative feeling, right? Whether it be anxiety, depression, it took everything away. Like I don't even really have the words to explain how much it was like, here's my solution. I found it, And so of course that first bottle was gone in like less than a week. And that's when I started, getting benzos elsewhere, right? The father of my...
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but at that point, it was really just benzos. The problem, though, was, and I'll be completely honest, and I think this is important to share, especially for mothers who maybe struggle. I was 20 at this point. I graduated beauty school. I got my cosmetology license. I had a hard time with the fact that I was a mom. Like I did feel like I was missing out. I didn't want to be at home. I wanted to be out at the bars. And it's so unfortunate to say. I mean, now I understand it. Then I felt a lot of guilt, obviously, for that. You know, I turned 21. We celebrated my 21st birthday at dinner with my daughter. You know, I have a picture holding her with my sash over me. And so it was just kind of, it was like this tug and pull versus like motherhood and creating this white picket fence life at 20 years old, but wanting to party and do the things that I was clearly missing out on as a young mom. So what happened then was I was mixing the benzos with alcohol, and that's kind of when the messes started happening. So I got a DUI. That was my first of many legal issues. So at that point, you know, my parents, you know, the police called my parents when I was at the police station to come get me, and my parents said, we're not coming to get her. You know, so I woke up in a holding cell. I barely remembered anything, and that was really because of the benzos.
Right.
The father of my child grew up in a home of addicts. So he was kind of on the other end where he had seen it, and, you know, he knew what he didn't want for his life. And so as he watched me go through this, it was unacceptable to him. So that's kind of when him and I started arguing. You know, he would go through my phone and see if I was like trying to, you know, cop, and then he would smash the phone and then take me to Verizon to get a new one. This was like a constant thing until eventually he kicked me out. So at this point, I was just kind of hopping around. My parents had given me this ultimatum: go to rehab or we will not be in your life. I was not physically dependent to anything. I hadn't really gotten into the hard stuff yet. At this point, one of my girlfriends had introduced me to Percocet. You know, that was really...
Good old Percocet.
Listen, I mean, I thought the benzos were the solution until I tried opiates.
Yeah.
Yes. So they were 10s, and I was just swallowing them. But
like big ones.
yeah,
The big boys.
exactly. Well, you know, I got into the little blues later.
Yeah.
Those were my biggest love, like forever biggest love. But even then, I still hadn't become physically dependent to anything yet. Even with the benzos, which I really is kind of crazy to me, because I was taking a lot of Xanax, and I almost even wonder too if sometimes I was experiencing withdrawal symptoms and didn't even know it.
Or
right?
did you ever just not go without them though? Like, was there times?
I did go without them sometimes. That's what's interesting. Now, when I didn't have them, I was out of my mind,
Yeah,
right?
craving them, yeah.
And I think there was a little bit of withdrawal in there that maybe I didn't even realize. I knew I felt like shit, right?
Yeah.
But I just couldn't kind of put the pieces together.
I also feel like the 20-year-old body just can like
can
handle
that's
so
so-
much
that's
more.
hell
so
yeah.
true.
I think
Hell
about when I
yeah.
was like 19, 20, 21.
You bounce back like that
That's
from like
you
whatever.
know what? That's a
Right.
really good point. That's most
I would
likely
time
part
travel
of it.
with Xanax all the time. You know what I mean? I'm like, boom,
Wake up
next
3 days
week, you know what I
later.
mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Can't find my car. There's ice cream everywhere. You know what I mean? I've stolen a bunch
Stolen
of stuff.
shit.
Those are benzos.
We all steal on Xanax.
Yeah.
That is
Oh,
like a
yeah.
universal truth.
Like my keys are gone. And I got 3 others. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where's my car?
I will tell you this, at least half of my amends list, I would argue even 75% of it was because of benzos, you
Yeah.
know? A lot of amends. And there were establishments that were included in that, you know? So what's interesting is, so when my parents first gave me this ultimatum, and also at this point, the father of my child and I had split up. So I was kind of hopping around, you know, my parents wouldn't let me live with them. It was just kind of messy. So at that point, my parents were helping take care of my daughter, which I very much appreciate because I was just in no place to do so. I didn't have a stable environment for her at that point. And so with this ultimatum at first, my thought process was, I'll show them, you know, I'm going to be successful. I still wanted to do hair at this point. So I was working in a salon. I was an assistant, and I wanted to prove them wrong. I was feeling very like stubborn, and one day when I do make it and they want me back, I'm not going to talk. Like that's kind of, you know, where I was. I had something to prove. That lasted for like maybe a month. And, you know, I remember the morning I woke up, you know, in a random person's bed. And after a night of partying, I felt like shit. I had nobody. And I called my mom and I said, you know, I want to go to rehab. And, you know, again, I wasn't physically dependent to anything. I wanted to go to rehab because I wanted my family back. Like that was truly my biggest intention. So, you know, my mom was absolutely on board. They were willing to do whatever it took to get me there, to pay for it. Like they were very supportive in that way in the beginning. And so, you know, of course I decided I'm going to go to treatment in California. I had always wanted to go to California. You know, those are my dreams, and a lot of us. And so, you know, I went to Michael's house in Palm Springs. And, you know, what's interesting is I remember when I walked in after I got through intake, which is always a fun process. And everybody was detoxing. Everybody was sick. Everybody was like, it was very interesting to me. I mean, I didn't even know what like a taper was or Suboxone. I had no idea. So I'm looking around and my very first thought is, I don't belong here. Like, I'm not like these people. I'm different. Right. And that was just a bad start, right? What kind of helped that was the friendships I had made. And I got really close with one girl specifically. And interestingly enough, after detox, they roomed us together. They let us do that, which, you know, it was good. We had each other for support. And at this point, you know, I was getting, oh my gosh, cards in the mail. Like, family members were sending me blankets. My mom would send me like more of my clothing. Like, it's so much support. They would even joke, you know, on mail day, they'd be like, how much mail does Abby have? Like, you know, it was just like ridiculous, but I, you know, whatever. I appreciated the support of it all, but it just, down the road that changed. So after the 30-day inpatient, oh wait, let me back up. So I decide after a little bit of time, kind of watching everybody, already did my intake, told them that I, you know, wasn't sick. A couple hours later, I went back in there and I looked at the nurse and I was like, I think I'm starting to feel it. It's starting to hit me, you know? And so she gave me Suboxone and I got high.
Yeah,
very
for sure.
high.
Wait, hold on. They gave you Suboxone for benzos or for the perks? This is for the perks.
Yeah, but I wasn't. I was not
physically
detox.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't detox.
And that was the first time you ever took subs?
Med-seeking.
And that was the first time I ever took subs.
Lit you up, too.
Lit me up. So interestingly enough, detox was a lot of fun for me. But this is what's so just wild about my story is a lot of my experiences, my first experiences with substance happened in treatment, you know, and I get a lot of questions about that. And regardless of all of it, listen, I'm a drug addict, like through and through. I have this disease lives in me. I have to fight it on a daily basis. Right. So regardless of how it all came about, I don't think it would have changed anything. In fact, if anything, it would have just pushed it down further. But what happened was absolutely inevitable. The way in which it was interesting. So, yeah, I'm getting high in detox. You know, we were laying by the pool, like the hot tub, and it was great. You know, I'm in Palm Springs. We're hiking. Where it was a lot of fun. So then, of course, I go to the 30-day inpatient, and I stopped taking the Suboxone, and I was fine because I think I only took it for a couple days. So. I got through the 30-day inpatient, and that is when first of all, I thought like you go to rehab for 30 days and you like come home a new person.
Cured.
Right? Like that was my
Cured,
mentality. I'm like thinking all the fun things I'm going to do while I'm out there. I'm going to get back into gymnastics. I've always loved tumbling. It's like a way to just exercise. And I'm like thinking it just was not, of course, what I expected. So once I learned that they recommended a 3-month outpatient, I'll be completely honest, like I was having a lot of fun. I wanted to like continue that. Getting sober was not my primary intention, you know, but I think that was because I didn't fully understand the disease that I had. Like I didn't take it as seriously as it was, you know what I mean? So I decided to go to Orange County. So I went to a treatment center in Mission Viejo for 3 months of outpatient, lived in a beautiful sober living, like homes I had never seen, you know, in Southern Orange County. And so, yeah, I mean, I spent 3 months doing that. Of course, I picked up a boyfriend along the way, which
as we do,
you know, God bless his soul. He's on Skid Row as we speak. You know, and I won't get into all the details as all of our stories go. There's a whole lot of, you know, back and forth and this and that. I'm absolutely one of those people that run from myself. Took me years to learn that wherever I go, there I am. So I would create a big mess in California. I'd run home to Pittsburgh. I'd blow things up in Pittsburgh and run. So that's what I did. I just jumped around. So I spent quite a bit of time in California. I would go home to visit my daughter for holidays, her birthday, you know, all of the things. What was so hard for me during this time was I really was like trying. I was trying, but I was preoccupied with other things, right? Boyfriends, drama.
And you stayed sober?
Yeah. For a little bit, I stayed sober. And then, you know, things kind of took a turn. Me and the same girl who got along really well and became good friends and inpatient, she also came to this outpatient with me. Like we had a plan to go together, right? So we lived together in the sober living. So yeah, I had a couple months, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months sober at this point. And at this point we were just living in the sober living. And it was just one day, her and I were the only two in the house. Everybody else was either at outpatient or working, right? and we decide to go out on the back patio and do step work. It's just it's so crazy how powerful this disease is. We went from doing step work to talking about like how we could cop. And, you know, I had not messed with heroin really a little bit in Pittsburgh, but just like, you know, powder, whatever, just totally different from what I would soon experience in California. So she knew somebody, of course. We met up with him. We went to the San Clemente Pier, and we were in the family restroom stall of the San Clemente Pier. I was sitting on the baby changing table. Like, I will never forget, you know, kind of like the image of it. And he has this, you know, substance that I've never seen before, right? It's brown. It's like liquid. It's not powder. I'm like, well, so I really didn't want to inject it. Like I genuinely was afraid, you know, I didn't want to die. I wasn't miserable. You know, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. So, you know, first they give me like a little cap of a, you know, water bottle with some water in it. And I try to do that. I'm like choking on the water. I'm like, you know what, just do it. You know what I mean? I got so frustrated. Well, this kid right in my wrist, I ended up getting a little bit of cellulitis. Was just poking the heck out of me. So that was kind of like my first, like, it was rough. Anyways, he finally got it. And I mean, you guys know, it just that first time, I ever injected heroin into my veins was like that. I mean, I don't know. That was it.
Yeah,
I mean, the
sure.
next year and a half or so was just hell. I mean, I chased it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's interesting how, you know, I try the benzos and I'm like, okay, here's my solution, right?
Yeah.
And then I try the Percocet and I'm like, oh no, this is my solution, right? And then I inject heroin and it's like game over, you know?
Right.
So what's interesting about this is that was a one and done. Like I didn't then go into like full blown addiction. We did it one time. We had this promise we wouldn't tell anybody.
Oh, you didn't get caught.
Well, we didn't get caught. The next day, the girl just like ran to her therapist crying and just told.
Oh, she outed you
I
guys.
was like, yeah. So then I didn't want to wait for them to come to me. So I was like, asshole. So then I walk into my therapist's office to go tell them myself. So they actually sent her to Nevada when that happened. I never saw her again after this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They sent me to a little detox down the street, you know, for like 24 hours, more so
yeah.
as punishment. You know, I need detox. I went back and like continued my journey. So from here, I stayed sober for a little bit. This was my issue though, when I was working on myself in California. I found myself in a really good place eventually, right? At one point, just to not take up too much time on the little details. In fact, I started working in treatment. I loved it. You know, I got RAD T1 certified, registered alcohol and drug technician. It was like the level 1, did it online. So I was the head of a detox center. You know, I did the vitals. I put the notes in the system. I dealt with the drug tests and sending those off. And I made the schedule for all the texts and things like that. I bought a car. And then I was a manager of a sober living in San Juan Capistrano. And it was just a beautiful setup, right? Like I didn't pay rent. I just bought a car. I'm making good money at this treatment center that's right down the street. We live on the beach. I mean, it was beautiful. But as great as all that was, I couldn't understand why I was having so much success across the country from my kid. Like it never felt right because she was so far away, you know? So it wasn't going to last. So just to kind of speed it up, this boyfriend of mine, my parents, who were just trying to help, they let him move back to Pittsburgh with me. You know, I decided I wanted to come home and I wanted to, you know, just try to do this at home. We didn't last longer than a couple days and him and I started using.
Oh no.
Yeah.
How much time did you have at the time?
Not even under a year.
Okay.
I hadn't in all of these like relapses, I don't think I ever really got past like 6 or 8 months.
Okay, got it.
Because all of this, 6 months, I would say. So, you know, him and I just started dabbling in little stuff. And then, of course, slowly but surely, I actually remember one time my parents were going out of town and I said to him, like, let's just go get rigs just because they're out of town. Like, let's just party.
Yeah.
You know, he knew better. He's like, bad idea. Well, we did it anyways. And so, you know, the one day I'm really, really sick, trying to cop. He's working. My dad got him a job. And I was to pick up my daughter from her dad's house in about an hour. I go to cop in this downtown. And I'll never forget this. When I'm walking out of her house with the stuff, she hands me one single pack of ramen noodles. She's like, just carry this out with you. I'm like, okay. So I do. I walk down the steps. I assume, right? Like she wants me to be holding something to make it look like I went in there for a reason other than buying drugs. I don't know. That was my assumption, right? So I walk out of this house. I get into my car. I don't even leave. I'm parked on the side of the street. I don't even leave, and I start doing my thing because I was so sick.
Right.
I didn't even want to start driving without doing it. I don't know, maybe 60 seconds in, I look up, and there is a black Escalade parked horizontally in front of my car, another one behind me, and a SWAT team literally surrounding my car.
No.
So in that moment, I don't know why, I like threw the spoon, like I just tossed it in the air like it was going to disappear. But yeah, so this was the DUI, but then this was my next pretty big incident that happened. You know, of course, my parents didn't know where I was. So basically what had happened was these people were already being watched. And I was just like the little drug addict that they were hoping was like their final, you know, way to then go ahead and raid this house. You know, so I dealt with that entire situation. That obviously, when my parents found out, they were like, you got to go to treatment. So I run back to California, right? That's what I know to do.
Yeah.
So we
Wait,
did.
So they arrest you?
Yeah. Well, so they arrested me. I stayed in the police station for about 2 hours. They questioned me. They showed me
And you're
photos. So sick. And they have me, wait, and it gets even worse. I had a bathing suit on. We were at the pool earlier. I had a bathing suit on with a cover up. They had me handcuffed, my ankles.
Yeah.
He was like smoking. He was holding a cigarette, the cop for me, letting me smoke a cigarette because my hands were behind my back. Yeah, so I'm in there like that, sick. And I remember
And it was probably freezing in there too.
Freezing.
that was like one of the most horrible. And I remember when they'd leave for a second, like when I'd be the only one in there, I was crying out loud to God. And my whole thought was, I knew I was late to pick up my kid. That was the biggest thing. So I kept saying, I'm like, I just need to get to my daughter. I cannot go to jail right now. I got to get out of here. I got to go get my kid, you know? And so I'm praying, I'm crying, I'm praying out loud to God. I'm like, I'll do whatever. I'll get better. Like, please just let me walk out of this police station, you know? And they did. They didn't arrest me. They let me go. You know, I don't want to get into all the details, but I wouldn't tell them. They were showing the dealer, the main guy, and I was like, I don't know who that is. I've never seen it before, you know? And then there were a couple other people that were involved in it, and so one of them that I didn't even know, I was like, oh yeah, I recognize that one. That's how I got out of there. So that was like my, you know, because we were even just talking about that, Rachel, how it's, you know, that no snitching,
no snitch mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you get sober, like, it's really hard to break out of that.
Yeah,
you know what
sure.
I mean?
Relearning.
For a long time, I had a lot of guilt for that, right? Because that house got raided, and they kept me in the back of a cop car while it happened to make sure that I couldn't give them a heads up. You know, there was a little boy, I think he was 3 in that house, and they found a lot. I'm going to circle back to this because you're going to be mind blown about what ends up happening later. So I was so I run back to California. My poor mother was like afraid, you know, she knew like what had happened. And she told me this later. I didn't know at the time, but she let me know that my mom was a little bit scared. Like, she didn't know if people were going to come after my family, you know. It was just kind of intense, you know. So, you know, I go back to California, you know, I don't stay sober. I go right back to working at the treatment center. Like, it was just really bizarre. So just to kind of fast forward through some stuff, him and I split up. He wanted to stay out in California. My main goal was my daughter. So I was doing well for a while, actually. I was working in the sober living again. I was working at the detox center. There was a guy who was the male house manager. This was a co-ed house. It was a lot of fun. Him and I got really, really, really close. I did well for a while. That's when I learned about the gym and how helpful that was for my mental health. I mean, I loved it. I was doing pretty good, but ultimately I wanted to go home to my daughter. So eventually I do. Again, I have a couple months sober, nothing crazy. But the thing was, I wasn't working a program.
Right.
So I go home to Pittsburgh. You know, at least out there I had the sober living and I worked in detox. I go home, I had nothing, you know? So I made this promise to myself, like we do, that I wasn't going to touch heroin. I would only do 30s. That was like I'm a good girl, you know? Literally. And I'm like proud of myself for this, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Not going to drink the hard stuff, just wine.
Yes.
And spend 10 times more money.
Well, that was what I was about to say is I could not afford that habit.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Well, and look at me. I was not getting any sort of. I was paying like almost like $50 a pop, and like they knew they could do that to me.
Get a
was
real.
getting
This
you.
little chunky girl. Like, I'm like, I'll pay anything. Ridiculous. So I had like where was I working? I think I was working at PF Chang's at the time.
Ooh, fucking shout out PF Chang's.
Well, they had there was an inside joke there. They would call, my nickname was Where's Abby?
Because you were
In the
always in the bathroom.
Or in your car.
in the
Somewhere.
bathroom,
Yeah.
frustrated, like
Yeah.
unable to hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, Where's Abby went, that was, for a little while when I was working there. But yeah, so where am I? Yeah, and that's just, I'm kind of rewinding a bit just to say, in fact, the reason my ex and I ended up moving to Pittsburgh, okay, let me just tell you this. My story's crazy. So yeah, sometimes I jump around. So I went home to visit my daughter for Christmas, right? And it was always hard to leave, obviously. But for whatever reason this time, I think it was because I had built so much at this point. Like I had the car and, whatever. My ex and I, we actually managed to get an apartment in Aliso Viejo. Like you could like see the beach from our bedroom. Granted, it was like a loft and had no air conditioning. We paid so much money for it. But I was so proud of that. We were both working at the treatment center. He did graveyards as like a tech. So it was kind of a decent setup. When I was coming home from visiting my daughter for Christmas, it just felt so wrong. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm leaving my child to go back to my life. Like it was so confusing to me. And so I didn't even make it through the Pittsburgh airport. I was hammered. I went to the bar.
no.
Yep. And I ordered a shot of Fireball and it just proceeded from there. So by the time I got to California, my ex was at the airport to pick me up. He hugged me real tight and I said, I need you to like go get the shit right now. And he's, of course, like, he knew at that point that I had never experienced addiction to heroin in this way or the withdrawal from, like, and he had, like, he just didn't want me to experience this, right? So he's like, absolutely not. Like, you have no idea how bad this gets. We're not doing it. I mean, he was sober too. I was messing him up with this. And then I said the one statement that I knew would do it. I said, okay, if you don't do it, I'll find somebody who will. And that was it, right?
Every time.
Every time. So, and that was literally it. I mean, oh my God, I remember the first time I was sick from heroin, laying on our blow up mattress that we had in our bedroom. My parents bought us a couch. So we had a couch in the living room and an air mattress in the bedroom. And that was it, baby. But I remember just like laying there face down. And that was the first time within withdrawal that like I kind of would have rather just not be here.
Yeah,
For
sure.
It was just like that bad. And I also felt really, really homesick from my parents. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Like
I want my mom.
I wanted to go
shit.
home.
No, literally. Yeah.
Yes.
When that emotion hits you, and everything gets
Yes.
dark and
Yep.
scary,
Yes.
and you revert to being like a little kid.
Yeah.
Yes, you
That's
do.
how I feel, right?
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
It's
how I
like,
felt.
At the end for you, I remember you saying like doing exactly what a good drug addict does and
Call my
call
mommy.
my mom.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
That's where I got it, yeah.
Oh, that's how I feel. Yeah, it wasn't even like, of course I missed my daughter, but my intention in that, I called her, and this is just so terrible. Like I'm so terrible. I didn't call her crying that I was dope sick and wanted to come home. I called her and said, I'm doing so well that I think I'm ready to come home. Our plan was to get on this, do the last bit of our shit right before the airport, which we did. We had a blast, you know what I mean, at LAX. By the time we were landing in Pittsburgh, we were like, oh no, what are we? Our literal plan was to just get to Pittsburgh and just be sober.
Yeah.
The first morning I wake up, my dad picked us up from the airport, whatever. But the first morning we woke up, we were so sick. And this is my first morning home
With your parents.
with
who
and
you
my
haven't
daughter
seen.
and my daughter.
Yeah.
He couldn't get out of bed. He didn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
I can't believe my parents didn't pick up on this sooner. Like we did this for like a little bit, you know?
Like jet lag, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
of a jet lag, and you're
Yeah.
like, no, it's heroin.
Yeah.
actually.
Exactly. Oh my God. So this is where, because again I jump back a little bit. So this was where and again, mind you, I didn't know anybody because my addiction with this stuff really started in California. So I didn't have anybody to call for us. So the only thing I knew to do was get Xanax. That's what I knew. I had a call, I had a plug for that, and I knew I was gonna at least feel a little bit better with some
Right.
anything, right? So we get the benzos, and then interestingly enough, somebody that we met in treatment in California who was from Pittsburgh
Is back in Pittsburgh.
was back in Pittsburgh. Yep. So he hooked it up, and that was the dealer that I ended up getting, arrested or whatever, stuck in the police station for hours. So that was that whole thing, right? So yeah, so him and I started with some benzos, and then we found this stuff, and then we did that. We only lasted, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months. Again, my dad had got him a job. He wrecked a crane. he was doing construction work. My dad's
big
A
crane.
crane?
so is that the right word? He was on one of those things that
With
have
A forklift or something?
yeah, like a forklift sort of thing. Yeah.
Or like a
Like where
a
you
bobcat?
yes, the yellow,
Yeah.
Tractor.
not a tractor, like an
Excavator.
yes, I believe yes, bobcat. I'm 99%
Looks like a
sure.
forklift.
Skid
Okay.
steer.
Yeah, either way, yeah, he wrecked one. He fell asleep. Yeah. And
While it was going.
yeah,
Nodded out.
my poor dad had to deal with this. Yeah, like his daughter's home from California with her boyfriend. He gets him a job and he's nodding out. My dad was driving him to work every day. Like they really wanted to see us.
Did he
succeed.
know at
It's
this
really
point
sad.
that like
Nope.
he was just like, oh, he's so tired?
He's exhausted. Well, that's what he said. That was his excuse. My dad was onto us. My mom's oblivious. My dad had an idea. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to kind of back up to that just to mention that kind of that was the first time I had really experienced withdrawals from the hard stuff. So then, like I said, we split up. I eventually come back to Pittsburgh on my own. I have no tools. I tell myself that I'm only going to do 30s. I'm not going to touch anything else. And so again, I had my little job at PF Chang's, but it was not enough to keep up with my habit. So I started taking my parents' checkbook and I was writing out checks to my bank account. Oh, I did this for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. A lot of checks, like a lot of money, thousands and thousands. Like a little under 10,000, just to give you an idea. And I knew, like, eventually
It was going to catch up to you.
every time he called me, my stomach would drop.
You'd see his name and just freak out.
And every time I'm like, is this the call? Like I knew
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
coming. You know, it's so interesting, like that out of all of this stuff, at no point did I feel like I could just go to them and be like, I'm struggling. Like
Yeah, help me. Yeah.
I'm sick. I need help.
Because you were living that.
You know? I did. I
Well,
felt
and you were
really
living that double
shameful.
life because you had been presenting this one way. You wanted out. They would have helped you. but
You're
you were
exactly
too
right.
Far into your story.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And you know what? The double life you brought up such a good point because I became very good at that. And not only like a double life, but just like putting on a persona, right?
Yeah.
Facade.
And I would get to that later because I ended up this therapist saved my life the last time I went to treatment outpatient. She was my therapist, but she would say to me like, people who present themselves well while they're using, like, I didn't necessarily look like a drug addict who's using. She goes, people like you are the ones who die.
For sure.
And it was just so because we were in a group setting and she said to everybody, she asked the question to the room. She says, what does a drug addict look like to you? Everybody's raising their hand, like bad hygiene, whatever, calling out all the things, no teeth,
Track marks.
bruises. And then the therapist says, do you want to know what a drug addict looks like to me? She goes and points to me out of the whole room. And she goes, people like Abby are the ones that die. And I'm sitting there like, I'm never coming back here. I hate this woman. What a beat. I was so mad. She ended up, another full circle moment.
She confronted the very thing that you used to defend yourself.
She was the first person in my life to do that.
Yeah, pierce the veil.
She ripped me apart. She tore me down in the best way and built me back up as like an actual person. She ripped the ego out of me. Like, yeah, she, and I'm the type of person, and this goes with my, my sponsor too. I need tough. You know what I mean? I need people to be really hard on me and really brutally honest with me. If people try to be gentle or mindful of my feeling, I just don't. Yeah, I need people that are like intense. And that's how I became as a sponsor myself, So it's tricky, but nonetheless, so I'm writing these checks. And at this time, God bless my parents, they had got me this little house. I had a little house that, I was trying to maintain. I didn't have it for long, just a few months. My daughter lived with them, not me. I wanted her back so bad, of course, but I was absolutely in no place. I remember one time with the 30s, I was decorating my front porch for Easter, and I had these like Easter egg string lights, and I'm, wrapping them around the balcony, whatever. I wake up in the morning laying on the front porch. I just must have passed out. And it's so crazy to me when I think about that and a few other, specific times. And I'm like, imagine if, that would have been an overdose. Like nobody was there,
I think about shit like that all the time.
The amount of times I would just wake up and I'm like, holy shit, But that time I literally slept on the porch through the night. So anyway, I remember I was in that bedroom one day. My dad called me and he said, hey, I just went to pump gas and my card declined. My dad works really hard. So does my mom. It doesn't happen, you know? Then my parents came from nothing. My mom's a doctor, now retired. My dad's an architect. He still works. He works for himself. So that doesn't happen to them, right? So he ran right to the bank, of course, and he had printed every single check that I had forged. So he's telling me this on the phone that he has, you know, all of the checks. And so, of course, he gives me the ultimatum, go to rehab or we're pressing charges. Of course, I'm choosing rehab. Well, here's what's funny. Here I go making the calls. I got to get back out to Cali. I got to escape this shit, you know? And my buddy, his name is Charlie. God rest his soul. He ended up passing away. It's a direct result of this disease, drinking and driving on a motorcycle in Dana Point and just crashed and went head first. And I was sober at that point. It was a few years ago. I flew out. It was just terrible. But anyway, we were really, 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 really close. So he was also a treatment, like director, coordinator, marketing. He did all this stuff, helped people get into rehab, helped people get flights. And that's what he would do. He would get me out there. I didn't have to pay, you know? So I'd always call him. So I call him this time and I'm like, Charlie, you got to get me back out there. Like things are not good right now. And he said no. And I just remember like screaming and crying and I took it so personal and I was so offended. And I also didn't understand, you know, hindsight, like he really saved my life in a way, because I had no choice to go to treatment in Pittsburgh because I couldn't get back out there. Nobody would get me out there. And so this would be the first time I had ever completed any sort of treatment in Pittsburgh, like ever. I always did it in California. So I go into rehab because I don't want, you know, the charges. And so and this time in treatment was different just in the sense that I wasn't playing cornhole. I wasn't playing volleyball. I wasn't making friends. I wasn't doing my makeup. Like I was miserable, you know, I was so miserable. I was just like in the corner, you know, whatever. So obviously as weeks went on, a little bit of life started coming back into me. And at this point, I'm not kidding you. If it wasn't 2 days, it was 1 day out from graduating. So I had a plan set up. You know, of course, I had lost everybody at this point. Everybody cut me off. So I had a plan set up to go into a sober living in Pittsburgh with, you know, the coordinators. And so I'm like a day or two out, right? And they do mail call. They call my name. And I'm like, there's no way. Nobody's sending me mail. They're like, nope, Abbey Fickley. So I open this mail and it's a 3-page typed letter from my dad, which I still have it, of course. In fact, I have a little bit of it tattooed right here. Oh, wow. Yeah. So this 3-page typed letter signed at the bottom of the last page. And it was 3 pages of a disownment letter. It was, you know, this isn't the daughter we know. This isn't the daughter we raised. I don't know who you are. You know, we have not... They just, my siblings were resentful of my parents because like they're living their lives. They're like, my sister got married, like they wanted to have kids, like they're living their lives. And my parents are too busy, like trying to save their youngest daughter who's just like killing herself, you know? So that was a part of the letter. Like we've really, you know, you haven't given much attention to your siblings. You know, you create messes and you run away and you leave me to clean them up. And like one of the hardest parts of that letter that he wrote was, he said, he was like, Abby, he was like, I advocated for you. He's like, when everybody had suspicion that you were using, he was like, I defended you. And he was just so hurt by me, which is so understandable. But so yeah, all that stuff, they took me off their health insurance. Every way you could cut somebody off, you know, was in the letter. And then the final page was where he had let me know that he decided to go through with the charges. So I was facing 32 counts of forgery, identity theft, and theft by unlawful taking, which I was looking at a minimum of 7 years in prison. So I went from like kind of being excited to like get back out there and like really try, you know, to I'm like running around to every tech and I'm like, you know, what's going to happen? I wanted somebody to tell me what was going to happen. Right. I wanted to know, am I going to go to jail? What will happen? You know, and of course nobody knew. And that was the hardest thing for me, was kind of like that blind faith, because now, you know, what's the point, right? Like that's how I felt. I'm like, so this is so hard to just stay sober. It's so hard already. And what am I doing it for? To go to prison for 7 years? Like that's where I really struggled. And of course there was this like millimeter of hope that, you know, maybe it will work out. Either way, I had no other option, right? Like, and that's, you know, we were at a meeting this morning. We were at a 7 a.m. meeting, and you know, they were kind of talking about when there's no other option. Like, there's no other option but to start doing the work. And I knew of AA. I had tried a faith-based program in California, and then I would do meetings, and then I would maybe get a sponsor, but I never worked the program the way it's designed, right? So I, you know, whatever, I knew of it. Well, thank God, when I got out, went to this treatment center, my car was in repossession mode, by the way. It was parked at my parents' house, and so I had nothing to my name. When I got out of treatment, I went into the sober living. I had to go to court for the possession charge. I had a court date for the possession charge, and I got arrested when I went to court because when my dad pressed charges on me, I missed the first court date because I was in rehab. So I go to court. I'm not kidding you, just a couple days out from when I got out of treatment, and yeah, I got arrested. You know, I spent the night in jail. Of course, the sober living, they didn't know where I was, and okay, so this was really important. So, well, number one, I was so angry that this happened that I once again lied to the nurses in the jail and told them that I was detoxing from alcohol, and they gave me benzo. I needed something, dude. I was so mad, right? So that's why, otherwise my date was March and then it became April, you know, from just whatever. So I changed my date. I get out of there. Now here is what made a really big difference to me. I assumed I was going to get kicked out of the sober living, you know, not only because I was just gone for the night. Nobody knew. I don't know why I didn't tell anybody I was going to court, but also I can't pass a drug test now. Right. So either way, I'm just like, I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what's going to happen. So actually the father of my child picked me up from jail, and then he dropped me off at the sober living. And I had got a text from one of the girls in the house that the owner of Pittsburgh sober living was a male and a female. Well, she had told me that the female was home in the house. She didn't live there, but she was there when I was on my way home, and she was scary. She scared me. She was very, you know, in a good way, hindsight, but she scared the shit out of me, this woman. She was so intense. She's like, "Or did you get step 4 done?" But like, you're like,
one of those no bullshit.
Oh my God.
It's RJ.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting kicked out for sure, you know? I will never forget this. I walk into that sober living, and mind you, I just met these girls like barely 48 hours ago. I don't really know anybody. I walk in the door, and every girl that lives in that house, and then the, you know, owner of Pitt, they're all standing there. And I walk in, I have tears in my eyes, and all of them put their arms out. And like, just everybody just like hugged me and just kind of like held me for a second. I just was like, I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? I was just in such a bad place, making really bad decisions. I hadn't received any grace or love like that in a long time. And that was so important because it got me, I don't know, I guess comfortable, but also excited to like live in this home. And now, mind you, any sober living I had been in was in Southern Orange County. In these mansions. Yep. We're having bonfires at the beach. Beach meetings were my favorite. Oh my gosh. Well, I want to do one of those soon. I miss those. But yeah, you know, and now here I am in not a great area. Probably have a dealer a couple doors down from the sober living. You know, the AC would cut out. There was like a mouse in the basement when I moved in. Like, it was just, you know, not the nicest house, but that house saved my life. So I ended up living there for a year. Literally a year on the dot, but I got a sponsor, of course. And what was so important about this house was the owner would call your sponsor like twice a week. And if you hadn't moved on even just a little bit, you got a warning. And then if by the second call you were out, it scared the shit out of me.
Sounds familiar.
Listen,
for sure.
Listen, when
I agree. I like
she's
that.
like, I need to meet
like,
this woman
that's
immediately.
right.
when I tell you that that way of her running that house, it saved my life. I was backed into a corner, and that's what that's what this morning at the meeting, that's what I thought of, is like, literally I was shoved in this corner where it was my only option. And so in the beginning I was doing it because I was afraid of her, and I had nowhere to live, right? So like my intentions were kind of whatever, but I started working, and I started working hard. And in the beginning, you know, I would wake up and throw up almost every day because I'd wake up, that fear of the unknown with the court stuff. It just was destroying me. It was killing me. And I remember one day, you know, not to be, I don't know, cliche. I don't think that's even the right word, but I genuinely did. I fell to my knees and I just was, and I didn't have a super strong relationship with God at the time, but I did. I looked up, I was like, I can't carry this anymore. I can't I need you to take this, I will do the work, but I have to get this off my back. I couldn't, it was just too much to bear. And so I said that out loud. And, that experience was really good, that blind faith, in the way of that built my relationship with God. That is how I learned how to rely on God, how to have a relationship with him, how to implement God into my life. So that situation really, really helped me with my relationship with God.
Right. So that letter that your dad wrote you was kind of like the catalyst.
It was.
That brought you there, right?
Completely.
I mean, that is I think you bring up such a good point, because I talk to a lot of parents on the front end or people that are like, okay, what are your success rates? How do you guarantee? How do you whatever? And it's like, or like they have to do it for themselves. And I don't really agree with all that. You know what I mean? When you hear those sentiments, because I don't care what brings you in.
It's what keeps you. That's what I say. I say that all the time. It does not matter what gets you in. It's as long as somewhere along the way you find that within. But I agree. You do not need that to get in.
It doesn't matter what your motive is. It doesn't matter if it's like, oh, I have nowhere to live.
100%.
It doesn't matter if there's like, oh, I'm trying to get out of this court case. It doesn't matter as long as it gets you in the door and the willingness can open just enough.
Yep. You get around the right people eventually.
Right.
And that's, I agree 100%, because honestly, the majority of the 30-day inpatient, I still wasn't really, whatever. I just didn't want to get in trouble. It really didn't come until I got to know these women. And I'll tell you a quick funny story, because this just, there's a lot of little messages in this that I think are important. But the first day I got there, I was on, a couple of days of blackout. My phone was off. I couldn't pay my phone bill. In fact, I'm going to shout out T-Mobile real quick, because I called them crying and I begged. I said,
they turned it back on.
This woman turned I told her, I just got out of rehab. I'm trying to rebuild my life. I need to have a phone. I said, I promise I'll pay you back. And I even said to her, this was 7 years. I said, one day when I'm famous, I'll shout you out.
Do you know her name?
I don't know her name, but
oh my God.
I
we need
swear,
to find the girl.
I swear
They
on
record
everything.
them calls. Hello, T-Mobile.
Yeah.
My girl, on everything, I said that to her. So she turned my phone on, and I did. I paid that when I could eventually, but she turned my phone on, so I'm on blackout. So I'm just and this was interesting for me, because now here I am 15 minutes away from home where I grew up, but yet so far it was with California, this was really strange at first, And so they were going to a meeting. It was a Tuesday that I got to the sober living, and they said, we're going to this meeting. Do you want to come? I'm like, yeah, I want to get out of the house. So a girl was coming to pick us all up. So she pulls up, we all run outside, and she sees the amount of us, and she's like, oh crap, I don't have enough room. I can't, that car seat doesn't come out of the back seat. I'm the smallest, so everybody looks at me.
You sit in the car seat.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
God has jokes. So I sit in this car seat and I drive. We go to this meeting, and I'm in a car seat. I ride to the meeting in a car. It wasn't even like a booster seat. It was like an infant car. Yeah. Okay, it gets better. So you know how it is. We pull up to the treatment, we pull up to this meeting, and everybody, of course, is outside smoking cigarettes, drinking a Monster. And, Pittsburgh sobriety, it's everywhere too, even out here. It's a small, community, really. Everybody knows each other. So when somebody new comes around,
everyone's like, who's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there I was, hopping out of a car seat with all of these people staring at me. That was their first impression of me.
I feel like that's a metaphor, because you were an infant in your recovery.
Okay. See that too. All the time.
Just a little recovery baby.
And
you had to get in the car seat. You had to humble your ass. Yeah. You took a car seat to a meeting. That's,
Yeah, there you go.
That's actually
little
win.
recovery infancy.
That's actually so funny. But that's where I was at with it, was the ego part.
Yeah.
And just the humility of it is really what I took from it. And what are you willing to do?
Yeah.
It was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And that to me was God. What are you willing to do?
Period. That's right.
And I was willing to do it, baby. I'll ride in a car. It was just funny. Little ego crusher there. But anyway, so that ended up becoming my home group. for over 3 years. Eventually my daughter was coming with me every Tuesday to that meeting. It was a really, really good meeting. So anyway, so I'm doing the thing. I'm working the steps. I have this sponsor.
Were you put on probation?
I was on probation. I'm glad you brought that up because I have to say, first of all, shout out to my probation officer. She was like a second sponsor to me. I got really lucky. That was such an extra layer of accountability because I never knew if she was going to come randomly drug test me. What is so funny is by the time I got through that, she had never once drug tested me.
But it's just the
They-
thought
they-
in the
yeah,
back
it's
of
the
your
thought.
mind.
I mean, I'm so glad. You know what I mean? It was a
Yeah.
good thing. But she would come over and sit at the kitchen table at the Sober Living, and I would just, like, guess what? I talked to my dad today. She'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? She was like, and she'd come. She had like 3 kids, and she would come back and say, "How's it going with dad? Like, is mom still upset about this?" It was really interesting. So yeah, I'm
I had a few good
Glad you brought that
probation
up.
officers. My probation officer still like messages me on
really.
Facebook. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
They're like,
Yeah.
Hunty, I'm so proud
get
of
him
you.
on the
You're doing
podcast.
so
I
well.
know
Who
you
is it?
should.
Rad.
What's his name?
That would
His
be
name's
so cool.
Patrick, or actually he goes by
Patrick.
Jay though. But
Okay,
yeah.
mine was Jessica. Her name was Jessica. But yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because it was and that was for my possession charge because the felony, the stuff my dad pressed, that took a long time for us to get to that actual like hearing.
Right.
In fact, almost a year because by the time we got to it, I was a year sober. So that took a long time. Of course, we had one court date where it was like in our local municipal, and then of course it got pushed downtown. That's another interesting story because the judge of our municipal, I now coach his daughter in cheerleading.
Oh wow.
Crazy,
Full circle moments.
crazy stuff. My parents were back behind me. The male owner of Pittsburgh Sober Living came with me, which I very much appreciated. But that judge, just because we're talking about it, he said to me, "Turn around and look at your mother." Of course I don't want to, but I do. I'm like this. He goes, "Turn around and look at your mother." It was like horrible.
Yeah.
So
totally.
I really turned. She was just like a mess, like
Right.
bawling. And he's just like, look what you did. Like, look what you've done to them, right? That was pretty cool because I I saw him last year for a speeding ticket. And when we wrapped it up, I said, "Hey, can I have a word with you really fast?" He said, "Yeah, come up here." And I walked up and I told him, I said, I'm sober, and told him all the things. And I said, "Thank you, for the accountability that you kind of forced me to have." But, it was just a nice moment to get to thank him. And now, he weighs when he drops his kid off at cheer for me to coach her. Sobriety is crazy. The promises are crazy. And I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of like jumping around. But so here I am working with the sponsor. I hadn't, gone to court yet for these big charges, but I'm like really doing the thing. I get a serving job downtown. That's when I met Mason, who ended up being my general manager up until last year when I dropped my final day before going full time with social media, which he has just been so supportive over the years. So I met him like less than 2 months sober, I would say. And I told him the truth, told him my story. The only thing I lied about was I told him my experience as a server. Listen, my first time serving was at PF Chang's, and I just didn't pay any attention. I wasn't there for long, so I really didn't have much. But whatever. How hard could it be, right? It's not that difficult. So he hires me. So I got a job and I was able to start paying, the rent. And so, that was good because I started to learn how to manage money again and pay bills, like slowly but surely. I made a deal with Honda that I would pay, my God, it was like $800 a month for 3 months, and they would not repo my car. Managed to pull that off with the Sober Living being willing to give me grace. Like they let me be late on my rent so that I could cover the car payment. Ended up keeping my car, got through that. So to fast forward, it wasn't until almost a year sober that I started like very little speaking to my parents again. The first time I had seen them and interacted with them was actually at my daughter's preschool. She had like a little graduation or whatever. So, and I have pictures of that day. But when we were done, my parents came up to me and they said, "Hey, do you want to go grab a bite to eat?" And I'll never forget because they obviously drove with Mila and then I drove my car separate. I was on the phone with my sponsor the whole way from the preschool to Steak and Shake. And I'm just crying. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. I was nervous. We have pictures and a couple videos actually from that day too. So, nothing crazy. It was nice and light. My daughter was there. We're celebrating her finishing her first year of preschool, whatever. But it meant a lot to me. It was a really big deal. And, you know, I will say in the beginning of all of this, of course I wanted to mend my relationships, but my main priority was somehow getting my dad to drop these freaking charges. Like I just, and you know, like I remember one time I tried to get him to go out to eat with me, and I didn't even talk to my sponsor about it first. She was like, don't ever do that again. She was like, do not ever do that again before consulting with me. I wanted so badly just to try to get him to drop the charges. So
Do you have the same sponsor still?
no, and I'll explain that actually. Yeah, I'll explain that. I wish, but she's no longer in the program. That was hard. That was hard for me. Yeah, so I'm a little over a year sober. I have seen my parents here and there, teeny tiny bits. Same with my daughter, teeny tiny bits, but barely. And we have court. And I think one thing my parents didn't understand when they did this was that they couldn't take this back. Like the state's going to pick this up. You know what I mean? I don't think they realized that. So the state picked them up, and they saw that I was doing well. I was doing better than I ever had, you know, consistently. And my dad ended up hiring a lawyer on my behalf, and he fought the charges alongside me. My mom, which listen, I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve that. I didn't. I'm so grateful. I don't know where I'd be today if he hadn't, but I didn't deserve that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I appreciate them so much, but like, wow, because they had tried so much, you know, in the past, and they learned a lot with like enabling, and they did some Al-Anon stuff. So it was really surprising. I think they saw something in me as I, you know, came up to that
the
year.
light turning back on, and
I
they were
really
getting their daughter back.
I really think that they saw it, and that was why they did it. Now, I always say this too. You know, my dad's a huge part of my story, and I talk a lot about him. He like really is my hero. But I don't talk about my mom very often. And the thing about my mom that I do appreciate so much is she's a little bit more like, she can't handle like cutting me off, pressing. She can't handle that. She wants to love, enable, like, and I get it. I'm a mom. I couldn't imagine having to do this as a mom, but she knew that. So she stepped back. She just did nothing. And I give her so much credit for that, because although she wasn't, you know, she's not in the story as much as my dad is, it's because she intentionally stepped aside.
Because she knew she couldn't handle it.
She knew she couldn't handle it. Yep. She knew she wasn't going to be, any sort of help with this. And so
I love the videos that you make with your dad.
Yeah, you know what?
So
I enjoy it too. He's funny because he's not a big like camera guy. You know what I mean? You could tell in videos, but he's kind and he does it. He does it anyways. So yeah. So in that courtroom, my mom sat in the very back and just bawled her eyes out the whole time. But she, again, just stayed out of it. My dad spoke on behalf of me to the judge. That was the first time I had ever seen him cry. And yeah, he just said, we've never seen her do this well since this all began, and yeah, we want to just like give her a chance or whatever. So I got 32 counts of the forgery, identity theft, and theft by unlawful taking, dropped down to 1 misdemeanor theft charge. Wow. Yeah. So continued probation, had Jessica for it. She picked it up. I was so glad. Had the same PO. Yeah. And so, of course, I had to pay my parents back in the form of restitution. Then, of course, I had a lot of like court, fines and stuff as well. And
community service as well.
You know what? I did not. No, I didn't have. I have in the past. Yeah. I have in the past. Actually, a funny story about that. I had a nun write me a letter of like I didn't actually do the thing that she said. She's my homie, that nun. Yeah, she's. Well, listen. Okay, here's where it wasn't really a lie. I used to altar serve at the church. So she okay. Altar server girls.
Altar once because
hungover.
Girl. I drank NyQuil all night one night, and then I had 7 a.m. mass because my parents are. They're like, 7 a.m. mass for a 13-year-old. Dude, I brought the cross and fucking, how you bring the cross? I got the whole garb on. I'm going down the aisle. I get up to the altar and I'm standing there. I'm looking out at everyone and I'm like, oh no.
And you went out.
I'm going down. The cross out in front of the whole church, in front of the entire congregation. Oh, okay. They're like, get us some water. And the ambulance. Oh man, it was Okay. Anyways, I'm so sorry. I just had that Catholic.
It's really something.
Trauma,
it's real. It's real. It's real. I know, right? And that's so funny because I never passed out at the altar, but I would be so hungover, and I'd hold the book for the priest while he do the
That
reading.
shit's heavy.
Oh my god.
And I'm like shaking,
Yeah.
and the words are tiny. I'm like, you probably can't even read. Yeah, that was really something. Okay, so where was I? The charges were dropped. Yeah, so at that point, you know, I just really continued to do my thing. And what's so ironic about it all is I spent years, you know, running back and forth, trying to escape myself. And I can't get sober in my hometown. I can't get sober where I created this mess. And that was the very place that I needed to get sober. Right? Like, you know, I believe everything from California, you know, all the experiences. I learned so much. I grew so much. And I believe, you know, everything happened the way it did for a reason. But, you know, it was just pretty ironic that that's how it went. So yeah, I lived in that sober living for quite a long time. I became the house manager of it. And I got to a point eventually, I went from serving to bartending eventually as well, which Mason fought me on it. He didn't want to let me do it. They made more money. And so he said no, actually. So I would, as a server, when I would grab my drinks at the end of the bar for my tables, or they'd be I'd say, what is that? You know, what's in it? What's an old fashioned? How do you make it? What's that stuff? Oh, vermouth. I just started learning. And I just want to say quickly, like I'm an alcoholic, absolutely. But throughout my addiction, I never really cared to drink. And that's not to say that it could never be dangerous for me, of course. I mean, it's a substance, but nonetheless, I felt like it was something that I could do. I felt like I could bartend. And the other thing I have to say too is the bartenders at this restaurant, they weren't allowed to take shots off, or you know what I mean, except shots. And none of them were like blowing coke behind the bar, like a lot of bartenders. You know what I mean? They're really good people. So I was
remember your
lucky.
videos, like your sober
Yeah,
bartender
so
videos.
many. Yeah, that used to be a huge part of my content was sober bartending. I would do like
that was a while
vlogs.
ago, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, 2023 is when I slowly dropped down days, and last year was when I finally let go of my last shift. So yeah, I dropped them slowly but surely. But it's so funny. I started learning the ropes, even though he wouldn't let me bartend. I show up to work on a Saturday. It was Kenny Chesney at Heinz Field, and we were across the bridge from Heinz Field. So everybody parks over there, whatever, you know. And 2 bartenders were on for that night, and the one bartender no-showed. And Mason walked up to me and he goes, "You ready?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm always ready." He's like, "No, you ready to bartend?" And never bartended in my life. I jumped behind the bar that night, day of the Kenny Chesney concert, one of the busiest nights for us in the year. And I crushed it. And ever since then, I was a bartender. Like, you know what I mean? So it's funny how it worked. So then I followed him to Riley's, obviously, after COVID and, you know, some things happened. But bartending really, you know, helped me get on my feet. So, you know, as a house manager, I found myself eventually in a place where my life had been picking up so much that the things that being a manager required, like I just, you know what I mean? I couldn't do it all anymore. You know, sitting at the table while she can't pee for 3 hours and filling the cup up with water. Like insult. I had enough eventually. Oh my God. You know, it's, you guys know. So, you know, I got my first little loft apartment, and I was really, really proud of that. It was just one room and then a kitchen and a bathroom. So, you know, my kid didn't have a room. She started to live with me at this point, no custody or anything yet. And eventually I promised her, you know, I'll get you a room and you'll be able to decorate it. And, you know, she's all excited, like, I want to make it Frozen themed. I'm like, we're going to do it. One lease later, my landlord had in fact, it was like a duplex, but not next door, like up and down. There were 3. And the bottom one was a really nice 2-bedroom. And a girl had just moved in. So I knew there was no time soon was I going to be able to get that. But he knew I was looking for a 2-bedroom. We're in Disney World, me and my parents and Mila, and I get a call from my landlord. He's like, "Hey, she just got accepted into a college out of state. She has to break her lease." And I remember we were in line for like the Slinky ride in Toy Story Land, and I fell to my knees. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, then I got Mila we got the 2-bedroom. She decorated her room Frozen themed. Now we were still in the city. I was near all the meetings that I went to where I got sober. Where I live though is, you know, more in the suburbs, but an expensive area that doesn't have much to rent. So her first year of grade school, I was driving her all the way, and I felt bad. She had to wake up so early, but she was just a trooper about it. And, you know, before that was COVID, and that's really where we rebuilt our relationship, her and I, because she was resentful at me for a long time. And she was little, but
it's hard to understand at that age,
yeah,
right?
but she got to be angry, and I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I gave that to her.
Yeah, give her the space to do it.
Yes, of course she was angry. But here's where it was tough because she wasn't receiving any discipline. in any other regard. So here she is already so resentful at me, and I'm
then
the
you have to
only.
discipline.
I had to
Yeah.
discipline. I would cry in the closet every night to God and just be like, please tell me this is the right thing. I felt like shit, of course. You know what I mean? I'm like, I want to do the things that make her happy after everything that happened. But I knew, of course, like in my heart of hearts that it's what she needed. And so, you know, we did the homeschooling stuff and, you know, I provided her structure and discipline, and I got things back in order, you know, and I really started to pick up my life again in terms of motherhood, you know. And so during COVID is really like where our relationship skyrocketed. And, you know, I'm forever grateful for the way that all happened. And it was really great for us. And yeah, then eventually I found a house in the district where she goes to school, where her dad lives, you know, just 5 minutes away. I rented there for a couple years until this past October. I bought a house, which is
Congratulations.
a street down the road. Thank you. Insane. Like never in a million
Yeah.
years would I think that I could do that on my own, let alone, you know, and it's funny when you accumulate more in life and you accomplish more and more, it just becomes more and more terrifying. And
For sure.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
drop is like, I'm going to get hurt.
a lot further.
Really.
Right.
Yes. I'm
lot
going to
further.
get real effed up
Right.
if I
Yeah.
fall from here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just all the more reason to like, you know, keep the structure and the balance. So about 6 months ago, I started going back to church, 6 to 8 months ago, whatever. You know, I had a little bit of church issues, resentments, whatever. It was mainly just kind of like the double standards I'd see and whatever in the Catholic Church. So I go to this church that's, you know, more of a worship kind of thing, real accepting, love it. Found those out here for the first time, so I'm grateful that I
love those
knew of
kind
it.
churches.
So good.
I'm not a church person really, but like
They're
those
so
are my
good.
best friend. One of my best friends is very. I love that.
Yeah.
Shit. Where it's like joyous. It's not like this like hard,
You're not
depressing,
kneel, sit, stand.
like painful hour experience. It's like this, like
Yeah, you get
singing
to
songs. Oceans by Hillsong United goes fucking
listen.
fucking slaps,
it
dog.
slaps.
Spirit lead me where my yeah, boy, slaps. That shit slaps.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I know I get the chills.
Okay,
over
sorry,
things. No, you're fine.
The spirit got me riled
Listen,
up.
I just want to give you this little full circle thing here. So my intention in going back to church was not only to continue to strengthen my relationship with God, but I also wanted to start to build a community around my faith. I wanted to start making more friends, maybe find a partner. And I just thought that this would be a good place to do that, you know? I mean, whatever. So when I start going and I wanted more, so I jumped into serving like 3 weeks in, I think. And well, guess what they needed? First of all, I heard my pastor say at church the one day, he said, they would stream it live on YouTube, right? Every mass, which is pretty common. For a long time when we lived in the city, I would watch mass every morning on the TV. Like I just really couldn't get there. And so I really relied on that. But I was like wishy-washy. I wasn't consistent with church. But I would watch it on YouTube quite a bit, the live ones. So fast forward, I'm sitting in church just literally, I don't know, a couple months ago. And I hear my pastor say, we apologize. We're not able to stream. We don't have enough help. And my heart sunk because I
You're
thought,
like, oh, that's me.
yeah, and you know, I relied on that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there are people that can't get here. Not
Yeah.
only that, what they were lacking was a YouTube broadcaster. You know, YouTube's it was just funny. I'm like, again, okay, all right, God, I hear you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so I jumped into serving immediately. You know, every other week, sometimes every week, I'm up in a little room and I'm broadcasting the entire service on YouTube. You know, kind of making the calls to the photographers and the videographers, I should say. And, you know, I love it. It's really cool. But what I love about it is the fellowship. And that's what I was hoping for. So when I walk in my first day of serving to train, they say to me, okay, you're going to be with so-and-so. I look up and it is my drug dealer who got raided.
No way. The one from California that's from
chills.
Pittsburgh.
No, not him.
Oh, okay.
No, so he introduced us to this guy.
Got it,
Yeah,
got
we
it.
didn't get straight
The
on
one with
that
the
guy.
3-year-old in the
He-
house that sent you out with the pack of
Yes.
ramen. Okay.
And we found him through the guy, that was in California. Yes. Insane. So I don't know if
Did they remember you?
I don't know. Here's what is so funny. I see him every week. We hug, we say hello. We have never discussed this.
Oh, you should.
You absolutely should.
Let me tell you this though. So I don't know if he knows who I am. Well, because here's why I say that. When I first saw him, I am like dizzy, lightheaded. He's like hi, what's your name? Like, he clearly didn't remember me.
Doesn't know,
Yeah, I don't think so. But here's the kicker. He had a girlfriend who was my age, and he's a little bit older. They had the child together. She did not like me. I think she thought like I wanted her man. I didn't. I just wanted drugs. I just wanted drugs. I didn't want her man. But she hated me. She wouldn't let me get from him. Like, she would try to interfere.
Being a plug's girlfriend is a hard job when you
Listen,
see all these other girls
you know what?
coming in and out,
It
willing to do whatever.
is.
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot that goes on.
Yes.
So it's I can respect her.
But
I can
listen,
respect
I
her.
didn't. I just literally, I was just like this sick drug addict.
Yeah.
Like, I just want drugs. But so yeah, so I, whatever. This is crazy. I'm mind blown. Like, I truly was so mind blown over this. But I just, kind of let it go. I didn't say anything to him. As far as I could tell, he didn't recognize me or remember me. Now, I'm sitting in mass another time, and I'm not serving. I'm just in mass, and this is right in the beginning of the service. And straight in front of me, like back of her head, I'm like, that's her. That's his girlfriend. That's her. I could tell. I'm like 99% sure, right? She turns just enough, and my heart drops because I know that the pastor's about to say hello to your neighbor. Oh. And if this girl turns around and beats my ass in church, I can't ever come back here. Should I run to the bathroom? Should I leave? I'm like, I didn't know what to do. Before I know it, he says, say hello to your neighbor. She turns around. We make eye contact. She goes, Abby? And I say her name. And she goes, bring it in, girl. Aww. And gives me the tightest hug. So what's interesting is she clearly remembers me. What I'm not sure of is if she, mentioned it to him, like, hey, that's so-and-so. And from what it looks like, she hasn't. Like, it's what I get at, what I feel is he has no idea who I am or who I was to him in his past life. But I mean, you can't make this shit up.
No,
I see them every week. And, to see them doing well, I mean, for all I knew, he was in prison. Like, right. You know what I mean? So to see these two in church, and their son is a lot older, on Easter Sunday, which I was supposed to bring Mylan. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Him and I were dancing together, holding hands. Their son, like, you just, this stuff is crazy.
So amazing.
And it's just like, it's the promises. It's there. There's so much to it that just you just it's so hard, but you just have to have like that faith that. People know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? When you see people in long-term sobriety and they're telling you to do things, they know what they're talking about, right? Like, it works if we work it. We know this. And, again, we talked about this a little bit this morning, but we want to be so like picky and choosy sometimes. And I think that life recently threw me a pretty big curveball, right? And it reminds you of how sturdy or unsturdy your foundation is. And, I as much as I believe I have a sturdy foundation, it knocked me off a little bit. I lost my balance. For about a week, I was just like, really not doing good mentally. I struggled, and so I knew I had to kind of reel it in, sandwich myself like big time, right, in between people and whatever. And I was very resentful at a person and just like whatever. But somebody in my life who's been really helpful and supportive said something to me that like really, really changed the game for me in a lot of ways, and I apply this in so many aspects of my life. He said to me, "Do you want to be right, or do you want to be free?" And it just like shook me to my core, right? Because it's that justifiable anger. It's like,
nothing worse.
Yeah. And I want so badly, but I'm right. I'm telling you I'm right. And maybe I am, right? Sure. Yeah. But it's like, I want to be free, Right. And I apply that in every single way, and in sobriety too. So if we don't like the steps, if we don't like this, if we don't want to do that, it's like, or you think this should be different. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be free? Like, come on. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's just been a really big help to me. But yeah, luckily today I have a beautiful relationship with my family members. I've made my amends in every way, paid people back, met up with people individually. I have a beautiful relationship with my daughter. And I just, sobriety it gave me a life. I wouldn't be here without it. So yeah, I'm super, super grateful, and I'm really happy to be here and that I had the chance to share my story
here.
It's amazing.
I've followed Abby for years on
And vice
TikTok
versa.
before I
Tell
even
you
like
when-
had a following.
we've
I
been
think
mutuals for
I
years.
yeah.
I don't even remember.
I
It
don't
was
remember
so-
either,
Yep.
but I've always just followed,
Like,
and
we've just always
it's
been.
and it's so crazy. You know, I feel like when I'm, especially in the recovery world, other content creators or people that I've met online, like when I met Hunter, felt like I knew him already. When I met you, I'd so, because I'm like,
Not
normally I'm
funny.
really nervous to meet strangers, right? People I've
Yeah.
never met in person. Every
Especially with
single
social media.
person,
You never
yeah.
know.
Every single person that I've met in the recovery space that also does this, I am immediately like, I love you. I know you. Hi. Like, you're my
Yeah.
person.
I know.
And it's so crazy. I'm so grateful that you're here. We've just never met in like, it's been
I
years.
know.
So cool.
It is. It's weird because I do feel like I know you.
We just
I've
get
always
right
known you.
to,
I know.
Yeah.
It's like
we've just
we-
been friends forever.
Yeah, we've
we
never
go way
like
back.
met. We've just always been friends.
Yeah.
But you're right. It does. It feels very natural, and that's just such a beautiful thing about recovery, right? It's like we all have lives. We all have like husbands, wives, children, jobs, bosses, and all these things. But it's like at the end of the day, to be able to go into the rooms and grab, you know, like a shitty cup of coffee and just shoot the shit and talk about like some of our it's just like I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for
Me
it.
too.
And I'm so grateful for you guys. I had so much fun going to an early in fact, I've been saying like it's really hard to get to meetings. I'm just so busy. I'm sitting there. I know. Like, listen, this morning I'm like, you know what? A 7 a.m. meeting just might be the thing for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's early enough, and what better way to start your day off,
Yeah.
man?
That's
it's
a
the
great way to
best.
start
Gym
the
right
day,
after, and we were talking about it and get into work. So
Yeah.
you know, and it, you know, we all go through phases. Like I'm 6 years in, and I'm still developing, you know, a new routine, different consistencies. There's waves and things change, but I just think as long as you keep the program close, you always be all right, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Facts.
true.
Facts.
So
I gotta ask first. What is what's
Oh,
tattooed
yeah.
onto your arm?
okay, yeah. So the last sentence of the disownment letter that my dad wrote me, the reason I got the last sentence tattooed on my arm is because I believe I achieved what. So here, and let me also say, this was the nicest part of the letter. Like this sentence
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the
It was the only part
There
you
was
could
3
have tatted
pages of
on
just
you.
like slamming.
horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Yes, exactly. Oh yeah, your daughter deserves a better mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was brutal. You have I'm not gonna cry. You have so much to offer and you have so many gifts to share with the world. I just hope that you find a way to live a happy, productive life. I love you as your father and I always will. So I got it because I felt like I had achieved those things, you know? So
And you have.
yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy. So,
I'm so
Amazing.
proud
well,
of
I'll
you,
tell you
dude.
something that'll make you guys laugh after we're all teary-eyed. Because look, I have love dad, all my love mama, like in their handwriting. Then I get this years later, and when I showed him, eventually he goes, "Ab, that's really nice." He goes, "But can we like stop putting them on your body?
Yeah.
Can we just leave them on the paper?"
Yeah.
Oh my god! So I'm like, what if I lose the letter, Dad? So yeah. Thanks for
beautiful.
asking that question, because yes, I meant to share the tattoo.
Well, it ties it together.
Yeah,
You know what I
it
mean?
does. It
just ties
absolutely
it all
does.
together.
You're right.
Well,
Dude, you and Tanner.
yeah, I
It's
know.
an
Hitting all the
emotional day,
feels,
huh?
man.
Oh.
I'm not a crier. I'm really not a
Yeah.
crier
Yeah.
either. And
I'm a crier. As soon as
I'm
anybody
not.
says,
I
I
I'm
didn't
like,
know that
it's
about
over
you.
with.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I think that's great. It really is.
maybe
It's just
it's
real.
great being brought out of
Exactly.
me
It's
being
just
around
real.
you guys.
Yeah, which the fake tough outer shell
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of us have. We're talking about that today too, especially men. I feel bad because it's such a. I feel like men just feel like they have to be strong, and again, that's why, like I always say, I think anybody could benefit from the steps. You know,
I say that all the time.
Imagine the
I
world
wish-
we
I
would
wish
live
some
in if
normal people
everybody
would-
worked
yeah.
steps. Like, you know,
The 12 steps is just like it's a heart opener.
yes,
It's
And
just
it
a
just-
way to be a better person.
Yeah.
Look at yourself,
Yeah.
hold yourself accountable, be a better person, help other people.
It has
That's
nothing
it.
to- it has-
like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Honest with yourself, honest with others, be of service. Just fucking, yeah. It's
Yeah,
just
because-
everyone would benefit.
yeah, and but it truly the drugs are a symptom, right? And it's
Right.
like
Right.
we're the issue, and so when we're working steps, it's not about the drugs,
Right.
They were a solution for a long time until they weren't. It's like, okay, now we get rid of those. We have to work on what the hell is going on all up in here, and yeah, anybody could benefit from that, really. So
Should I ask my question now?
Do it. Do
Okay.
it.
Would you rather fight a she's like, fight?
oh god, what's happening?
A horse-sized duck, one horse-sized duck, or 100 duck-sized horses?
Okay, hold
And
on.
why?
100 duck
Picture it.
size.
Close your eyes. Picture it.
Okay, so 100 little horses or one very large
Yeah,
duck.
very low. Yeah.
Okay. Honestly, I think I would choose the duck that is the size of a horse.
That's what I said too.
Yeah, I just think, even with the little ones, there's a lot, right? Coming from all angles. Even though the one is big, it's still just one. I am tiny.
You can run as hell.
Listen, I'm tiny, but like
I'm mighty.
I will.
Mighty.
You're gonna punch it out.
Listen, people are like
Throat
always
punch
shocked.
that-
Yes.
that duck.
Look, I got some little guns on
There
me.
we go.
Dang.
Like, shit.
Yeah. Look at me.
Have you ever seen like a duck though, like flapping at you, like even a small one?
I
I'll
feel
run
like
from. I'd run from a little duck.
Strategically,
Yeah, I
if
guess
you just
so.
figure out where to place yourself or
Yeah.
you get behind it, you could fucking ride
it
on
out.
that.
That's what I was thinking.
Like it's Falcor.
Yeah.
Flying, you see me
Yeah.
flying on a big
I was gonna say
horse-sized duck
be
through
riding,
the
yeah,
air.
riding on
Yeah,
it.
wait, do ducks fly?
Make that
They fly.
duck
They
my
fly.
bitch,
I
you
was
know?
Just
thinking
like
of
distances.
chickens
You know
for
what I
a
mean? Like
second.
Yeah,
short,
real
like,
little.
Ducks
You know what I
fly.
mean?
From the land to the water.
do, like,
I think,
long
no, I think
jumps.
they go. Mallard ducks go. I've watched that movie from the '90s with the ducks.
Oh, no, they fly.
What was that? Fly away home.
Yeah.
Fly away home.
Yeah.
That,
I don't know what
They
that is. That's
migrate.
so funny.
They migrate. They do fly. They fly.
Yeah.
They don't just like little fly. They fly. Like
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
yeah,
Oh wow.
it's one of my faves. We ask everyone. Okay, so
Are you happy today?
I mean, yeah. Generally, I mean, see, I hate the word happy, and I don't hate it, but it's a tough question to answer because I just feel like my life is constantly full of, and just in general, like nothing specific or crazy, but like problem and then finding a solution, right? And then, there's little things and then there's big things. And how can I learn how to continue to walk through life while I'm dealing with these little things? And still I'm constantly learning and trying to, get to a place where everything doesn't stress me out so much. And because at the end of the day, I have a lot, and gratitude lists are a big deal for me every morning because I quickly forget. I quickly lose gratitude. I mean, if you would have told Abby years ago, like what I've accumulated today, I would have like fell to the ground. Like I would have fainted. And today I'm like, you're not working hard enough, and it's just like crazy. But so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm grateful. I have an incredible life. I have an incredible relationship with my daughter, but I'm still working on how to navigate challenges and find solutions and still walk through life in a happy way because, I don't know. I get a little bit, I stress out really, really badly. It like to the point where it'll physically affect my body, like I will,
I feel that.
it's been a journey. In fact, a while back when my doctor like helped me kind of come up with a system, but stress is like truly the number one killer right there next to the disease of addiction, of course, but
and we got both them hoes. So.
we got both them hoes. So I can't just look at you and say yes. You know what I mean? It wouldn't feel right. I'm also not happy. It's life, it's
Up
life.
and down.
And I just,
Comes and goes.
every day I get closer and closer to getting myself to a place, and I don't know. I mean, there's never going to be a day where I'm like, all right, I did it. You know what I mean? It's going to forever be this, but that's why I want to learn how to do it in a happy way, in a not so stressful way. Like I'm going to figure it out. We're going to get through. We know how to do that. Just like a real good mellow spot where I'm peaceful. I think, I'm peaceful. I think that's something that I could say yes to, but yeah, sorry. That was like a
No,
not a very
it's
straightforward
honest,
answer.
Fantastic.
It's
Yeah,
honest, though.
I had to be on.
We
It's
love an authentic queen.
thank you.
We
It's a
do.
great question to ask, though. I think
Yeah.
you get interesting. It makes you think a little bit too. I mean, I'm like,
Everyone's answer is always so different too, so it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Right.
To
oh, I'm
see all the
sure.
different.
Has anybody ever just been like, yeah?
I think I was.
I think you did. You
I think
gave
I was
an
yes.
explanation, though. You
Just
were
happy
like,
to be. I gave an explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
but
happy to be
but I
here.
think literally I was just like happy to be here, happy to be alive. Like
listen,
things are good.
Yeah, like I could not look at you and say, yes. Well, like I am happy. I am. I could say that I'm happy. But what I really could say is like, I'm content. I'm peaceful. I'm confident. Like, I think those are a lot, but just with happy, it's not all the time. It's not a constant.
Right.
And I think that to ever set that expectation would just set me up for failure.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just not, that's just not life. I hope there's a lot of happiness, and there has been. Oh my gosh, especially in sobriety. Like the amount of, oh my gosh, the amount of joy. Earlier I was saying, like, I don't know if, do you remember like when you first get sober and you hear a song and like just the chills come back?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I would get chills over anything. Somebody could say thank you, and I would just get chills. It didn't matter what it was. It was just all of my emotions were coming back, and I didn't realize they had left. And when I started feeling all of that, I'm like, yeah, wow, I really lost out on a lot of on a lot of life from addiction, and all of those small things. Whenever you're in early sobriety, you know, some of those I think are some of the most important things. You know,
100%.
Being able to
100%.
cry again and feeling the chills again, and just emotion,
just being able to feel. Period. That like waking up.
Yes.
Laughing in detox and rehab
like
is one of the
stomach
most
hurt,
like therapeutic. Silent. I've never
so
laughed harder.
Me neither.
Except for that dinner with Alex. And
oh my God,
I was
that
crying.
Was so good.
But I've never. That was like a rehab moment for me. That was like the same. It was equivalent to a rehab belly laugh when everyone's just dying and you're just like feeling for the first time in so long.
Yeah. Oh
There's nothing like that.
Yeah, that was sober living for me. It's just you know, I said that earlier too. I'm like, some days I'm just like, I wish I could go back for the weekend.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm saying?
Signing up for treatment right now.
Let's go. Yeah. Tell me when to go to bed.
Yeah.
Tell me when to eat dinner.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna move into the compound again.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's different too, because when you go in, like if you were to go in now with all your life, you can't. I think so much of the magic is that you don't have anything.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like you don't
You're exactly
have
right.
anything.
Yeah, you're
right?
not
So
worried
like
about
those
you have nothing
moments.
to lose, really, yeah.
Well, those moments mean so much more, right?
Yeah,
because like
you're
you don't
exactly
have
right.
anything, and so like all you have is that currency.
You know what? That's a
right
really
then and
good
there.
point, and I think that's really important. Do you know what I mean? Like,
For sure.
I mean, it stuck with me, and I picture it. I was in an Ativan or jogging buggy, and we were in Palm Springs, and we were headed either to the gym or something. I don't know. Literally, I could remember a couple of the songs even. But yeah, there was just music playing and it's just all down my body. And I'm just like, oh my God, this feeling, you know what I mean? So yeah, you're absolutely right. You pay attention to it because you don't have much.
That's right.
Nowadays, so much is going on. You lose sight of those little things that make life. And so that is such a good point.
It's always tell people that are like coming into rehab or they're in sober living. I'm like, dude, you have nothing to lose right now.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
you are so in the moment of right now, like cherish it.
It's a blessing.
You know, because you'll look back if you stay sober for a year, 2 years, 6 years, you're like, fuck, I miss that so much.
Yeah.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The laughs, the almost like lack of responsibility, like not as much responsibility.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
You
It's
only
all
have to
right.
worry
It's
about
all
get this moment and
God.
doing what you're doing, and that like
And
you don't have to worry about anything else.
Getting into Medline on time.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a
Being
question.
in Medline.
What would you, how do I say this? What would you tell somebody that's watching right now that's like currently living a double life?
Oh my gosh. It's not maintainable. And it requires a lot of energy to do so. And with it not being maintainable, it's simply not worth it. And if people are out there living a double life and doing a good job at it, I know I did a good job at it. You know, I would just say, first of all, pick one. And do not be afraid to just ask for help. You know, I it's again kind of cliche, but I always appreciate this statement, you know, bury your pride before it buries you. And I think the double life was all pride and ego. I couldn't fathom admitting that I was struggling as badly as I was. I had and you know, I grew up like look good on the outside, don't tell them what's happening on the inside. And I carried that into my adult life, right? That as long as you look good, it doesn't matter how you feel, which is you know, it's terrible, it really is. And so, you know, I think that's a part of it, maybe not for everybody, but a lot of people. And that's no way to live either. There's no benefit in what you're doing. And the biggest thing that therapist told me, which by the way, one more full circle really quickly, she's now my therapist again. 5 years that we didn't
You have a lot of full circles.
Yeah, 5 years
there.
that we didn't speak. She was traveling the world doing free therapy for veterans and their families for a long. She's incredible. But yeah, so she's my therapist again. But what did I want to say that she said to me? Oh man, I lost it because I interrupted myself. It'll come back to me. What did she say to me?
Don't think about it. It will come back to you when you don't think about it.
Yeah, you're 100% right because I'm just completely blank now. Got it. This is the biggest thing with the double life. You are not fooling anybody but yourself.
Right.
That was what changed it for
Very
me.
true.
Because in my head, I was tricking people, right? I was tricking them into believing that I was this person that I was not. And I thought I was getting over on others.
Yeah.
All I was doing was I was the fool.
Yeah.
You are not doing anything but fooling yourself when you live a double life. And that's the biggest thing that I would say. Stop as soon as you can. As soon as you can. Something else that people would say to me when I wasn't ready to like get sober right then and there, they'd say, "Okay, are you ready to die?" I'd be like, "What?" Well, you know, you're not ready to do the work. That must mean that you're okay with dying.
Yeah.
Of course, potentially, whatever, but little intense. Again,
that's the reality.
that's a word
that
for
hits
me.
you.
Yeah. No,
That's the kind of stuff I had to hear, you know?
And that's the reality of drugs nowadays, too.
For sure.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why when you are just fooling yourself like that, you are closer and closer to your grave. You are. It's not worth it. You are not getting over on anybody. You know, you are not, you are only hurting yourself. I just can't say that enough. You're only hurting yourself. And again, I know it's hard. I know with the ego and pride and, you know, you just don't want to prove other people right or whatever it may be. When you get sober and you are able to build a life, you will look back and be so grateful that you just set your ego aside for a second and admitted that you were struggling. And you know, we've all been there. We've all had to do it, right? Whether we wanted to or not. So, yeah. That's what I would say.
It's great.
Fire. I'm so glad you were able to do this. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
thanks for
thanks for
having
coming
me.
out. Yeah,
The
thank
whole,
you.
the past 2 days have just been so much fun.
Yeah, we had fun out here.
Yes, because of them, I've tried like real sushi.
She did.
And
right.
tuna.
I'm so
You were
proud.
far away from me. So I don't know if I've never even tried tuna ever in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. And I
Really?
was never.
Oh my
But
God.
Not
you liked
even
it.
canned.
You liked it.
I couldn't believe how much I liked it. In
Oh.
fact,
So good.
so I love truffle, everything, right? So with the avocado one, I was so pumped. I'm like, I'm going to love this one. I ate that one. I was like thinking, I'm like, oh my God, I prefer the tuna one. I was like, I couldn't. But you know, here's like, so you're taking us to this awesome sushi place, one of the best ones in LA. I'm on a trip. I'm really going to sit here and not try this shit
got
right
it.
now. Same with, you know, even lunch when you got
Yeah,
what was that called?
Howdy's. The
Ceviche.
Ceviche.
Oh, did you try the ceviche?
Hell yeah, I did.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna do this.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm also not a baby bag bitch.
That's right.
Yeah, you
I'm
gotta
no
try,
baby back,
you
bitch.
know.
You
As
do.
long, like I said this morning, as long as it's not crack or heroin, you gotta try it.
Yes.
As long as it's not gonna be detrimental to your mental health or whatever, and it's a life experience, you gotta
Well,
try
that's
it.
what I was about to say. Trying foods is what it is. It's a whole. It's not just about the food. It's the entire experience. Yeah.
exactly. It's about
I
living
love it.
life, more
Well,
life.
And the support that I had during it. You and Sammy, I'm like, oh my God.
we had to.
He's like pouring my.
We're like
soy
coaching
for
her
me,
through it.
doing all my stuff. I was like,
Of course he was.
Oh my God, yeah. I fell in love with him that moment. Like,
Oh,
well, no,
he's
I
the
fell in love
best.
with him when I saw his mini platform mugs. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be friends. But this has been incredible. You guys are speaking of meeting people in person after kind of seeing them or knowing them online. Like, yeah, you guys are just incredible. As much as I thought you were online, you guys are even better in person. So this has just been such a fun experience. I feel very taken care of. Feels like very much like a family, which I know, you know, just I'm sure that's what, you know, all the people you help feel like. I can't, you know, because that's just how I have felt, you know, that vibe is strong. So I just want to say that. So I can only imagine with people that are, you know, sick and struggling and want help, the love that they receive from you and what you've built. I just, you know, I can't imagine. And I just give you a lot of respect to you for that.
Thank you.
A lot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
We did it.
Beautiful.
Perfect.